I liked the music. I liked to translate English lyrics. It was the world of fashion, of everything which seemed to be modern to us. It was even the language of this evil capitalist bloc.
This is Cold War Conversations. If you're new here, you've come to the right place to listen to first-hand Cold War history accounts. Do make sure you follow us in your podcast app so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Bärbel was born in a village near Magdeburg in 1962. She explores her personal and professional life growing up in East Germany. We delve into her family's views on the East German government, her journey to becoming a teacher, and her experiences teaching English in East Germany. We cover gender roles and the pressures to become a member of the Communist Party. Also discussed are the ideological and societal differences between East and West Germany, as well as the impact of the Berlin Wall's fall. Bärbel reflects on her career transition post-reunification, her family life, the significant changes in Magdeburg, and details her first trip to the UK. Highlighting the joy and the challenges she faced, the episode provides a comprehensive insight into the daily life and career of a teacher in East Germany. I'm delighted to welcome Bärbel to our Cold War conversation.
So, I was born in a nice little village near Magdeburg, and this is the place where I spent my childhood. And I was born in 1962.
And who was in your family?
So we were a small family. I'm a single child, so just my parents and me. And we were living together with my grandma, so we were four people together.
What was your parents' view of the East German government at that time?
So my parents were the typical GDR citizens. They were not members of the one and only party. They were really critical, but mostly at home. They were not satisfied with the shortages of goods, with the situation in the GDR. So you had to wait around about 12 to 13 years to get a Trabant car. They couldn't travel. They couldn't say what they wanted to say, what they really thought. So they were really critical, but as I said, mostly at home. So they tried to adapt to the system.
And your grandmother, she'd lived through World War II?
Yeah, she was born in 1909, and yeah, she lived in World War II, and she was not talking much about it, and I didn't dare to ask a lot of questions. So this is what I regret now, because there is no more chance to ask these people. But as a child, I was afraid of making her sad, and so I didn't want her to think about all these bad times. My grandfather wasn't at home, so he had to fight in the war, and she was alone with her daughter. So I think it was a very hard time, and I didn't dare to ask many questions.
That's entirely understandable. What was the accommodation that you lived in? What was that like?
So it was a house near a river, so it was a very nice place. For my parents, it was always difficult to modernize the house because you couldn't get the construction materials you wanted to get. So it was hard for them, I guess, but for me it was a very nice place in this village, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, sounds nice. What did your parents do for work?
So my parents, they were really hardworking people. My mom was a bank clerk. My father was a car locksmith. It was a really important job in the GDR, so he was very in demand, I would say. Yeah, so they wanted to give their best and to do everything for me.
So did your father use that role to sort of help out neighbours and people like that in order to get stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to get hold of?
Yeah, so you could change things maybe, so he could get things for the house, and he repaired cars. Yeah, so it was kind of this connections you needed to have.
What were the neighbours like that lived around you?
So the neighbors were very normal people. There were a lot of children in the streets, elderly people and young people lived together. So it was quite normal, I guess.
So you had lots of kids around you to play with?
Yeah, so a lot of kids were there, and so the streets were very quiet, not many cars, so you could play badminton on the street or football or whatever, hide and seek, and nowadays a lot of cars are going there, so it wouldn't be possible today.
Did your family have any relatives in the West?
Yeah, we had some relatives in the West, so my grandma had some cousins, sister-in-law, brother-in-law. My great-grandmother lived there, so mostly people who were much older than me.
And did they come and visit you much?
Yeah, they came and visited us, and so I remember my parents and them always discussing about these two systems, and so yeah, they left the GDR, or they had left the GDR before the border was built, and they were always talking about the pros and cons of the two systems, and yeah, they came, and so it was kind of this feeling of the West when they came with a big car
and gifts, I presume.
Yes, and gifts, right.
The West packet.
West packet, so maybe jeans or sweets or things like this.
Yeah. And what was your schooling like? What was your favourite subject?
Oh, so my favorite subjects were, I liked languages, so German, English. I even liked to learn Russian. I liked music, biology, chemistry. Yeah, so I liked to go to school.
And the teachers, what were they like?
So the teachers, I remember them, they were very strict and even different. So I remember teachers who were very nice and kind, and I guess that's why I had always wanted to be a teacher, because I met a lot of nice teachers, but there were teachers who were strict as well. So yeah. And this school system was the typical GDR system.
Did you always want to be a teacher? Was that the job you always wanted to do?
Yes, I had always wanted to be a teacher, really. Since I was 5 or 6, I had been dreaming of being a teacher. So I don't know why, but I always had wanted to be a teacher, yes.
And was it an easy path to become a teacher in East Germany?
It was an easy path, because if you said you wanted to be a teacher, it was quite easy, because the system needed a lot of teachers. So it was easy. Yeah, it was easy to become a teacher. So you got a lot of support because they wanted to have a lot of teachers.
And what was teacher training like?
I liked it a lot because you needed your A-levels and you needed 2 subjects to study. So I studied at Halle University, and for me it was a very exciting story, because I moved from this little village to the exciting city, Halle, and the teachers' training was different, I think. So we had the lecturers who were very open and intellectual and smart, and they taught us in British or American literature. We learned a lot about communication, about grammar, but we also had lessons about ideology, about the future victory of this system. And there it was much stricter. So I liked everything about literature and talking and learning about the countries. But these were the topics we had to do. And everybody studying in the GDR had to do these ideological subjects as well. So, yeah. And maybe what I liked was we had a lot of opportunities to teach. So weekly we could go to school and teach and try and talk to teachers. It was a lot of practical work, which I really liked. So it was a very exciting and good time in my life. Although you had these ideological slant as well.
Why did you want to teach English? Why did you choose that as your speciality?
I studied English and Russian because I like languages. I liked to communicate and I like to travel. And so I thought maybe languages can help you to meet people, to communicate. And English was a special subject because it was kind of an entry into a big modern world. I liked the music. I liked to translate English lyrics. It was the world of fashion, of everything which seemed to be modern to us. It was even the language of this evil capitalist bloc, and so it was kind of a speciality. Yeah, so this is what I liked about the language.
Were any of your teachers native English speakers?
Some of my teachers who were German had the possibility to stay in Britain for a while. And each year we had some assistant teachers, so some young students staying or coming for a year to university, and they taught us. So we could speak to native speakers and they could tell us something about their system, about their culture. It was very, very nice to talk to them, to talk to these native speakers. Yeah.
Were they in favour of East Germany, these teachers?
I think they were. Otherwise, I think they wouldn't have been allowed to come to university to Halle, I guess. So I think they were.
So when you discuss the differences between the West and East Germany, did they tell you all about the evils of the West, or were they complimentary about the West as well as the East?
I think with these young people, we could have very open discussions, and maybe, I guess, being a citizen of the GDR meant you knew when to say what. And so I think we had a feeling, or I had a feeling, what can I say in which situation? And so I trusted them, and we could discuss very openly, I think. There were teachers I wouldn't have said that openly, but they were the people I trusted. I don't know whether it was okay or not, but nothing happened. So I think it was okay to be very open, because they were young, we were young. So even in the lessons we talked openly, but sometimes we met in pubs or so, and then we spoke about this as well.
I'm presuming they had some strange English accents as well. Did you find some of the English accents difficult to understand?
The ones we had, I think they didn't have these difficult accents. No, I think it was not difficult to understand them.
They spoke like the BBC, did they?
Yeah, I think they did, yes.
Why was English taught in the GDR? Because most students are never going to get the chance to travel to the UK. So when are they going to be using English?
So I think it was maybe being a student, you could learn English voluntarily. So it was your own choice to learn English or not. And I think most of the students learned it because of this entry into this new world, which seemed to be very far away. But many GDR people worked in foreign countries. So they worked as engineers in countries like Iraq or Syria, India, Cyprus, Algeria, Turkey. They were mechanics, worked in foreign trade. They were pilots. So we had a lot of economic relations, and so they needed English for export. And that's why I think it was kind of if you wanted to be successful, I think you knew you should learn English. Yeah, so.
And it was a popular subject for students.
Yeah, it was, because it opened another world. So it was not that narrow, it was not that gray. It seemed to be colorful and open and wide, and you could understand people from America, and you could have this feeling you belong to this international community in this lesson, in these lessons. So I think it was one of these reasons to learn English.
Yeah. Because you mentioned, one of the advantages was being able to understand the lyrics of songs and things like that. Was there any particular music that you enjoyed?
Oh yes, I liked. So the bands of my time were the Bay City Rollers and Rubettes and Sweet and the Rolling Stones, and I don't know whether you know Harpo. So all these English texts, and all these lyrics, and sometimes even in English lessons we listened to these lyrics or to this music and translated the lyrics, which was kind of fun, but we didn't have you couldn't copy text, so you wrote them down and wrote them on the blackboard. So nowadays it is quite easy to have a PC or maybe a laptop and to have all these texts with you, but that time you wrote everything down and you listened to the song, you wrote it down, wrote it on the blackboard, and you read it with the students, so it was much more difficult. And nowadays everything is quite easy because you can easily get everything you want to have. And it was very hard because you couldn't buy the CD or the whatever, so you couldn't buy anything, and you couldn't buy no CD or no thing.
Yeah, I do remember the Bay City Rollers and the Rubettes. Did they have a hit with Sugar Baby Love or something like that?
Yes, yeah. I
don't know
somewhere
why.
I have a list. How Deep Is Your Love? The Bee Gees, Massachusetts. More Than a Woman. You Should Be Dancing. Bye Bye Baby. Saturday Night. So a lot of songs which I liked. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Can you remember the first class that you taught and what that was like?
The first class I had, yes. I started being a teacher in 1985. And so I had a 5th class and a 7th class. I was very excited and I was very happy to be a teacher at a school in Magdeburg. And yeah, maybe nowadays I think I was really, really young. So I was 22 when I stood in front of the class. And maybe the 10th classes, they were 16. But I loved it so much being a teacher. Yeah, I liked it really. It was really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's a teacher. She teaches primary school, and she can still remember that first class. And she started out in inner city London in a primary school, which was quite a tough area to start in, but it gave her a really good grounding in terms of dealing with pupils.
Yeah.
Were you ever pressured to join the party as a teacher?
Mm-hmm. So I must say I wasn't really pressured. I know people who were really pressured to join the party. So I was once asked when I was 17 or 18, I was asked by my form teacher, by my class teacher. He said, "Hey, you would like to be a teacher, so maybe teachers should be in the party. Or would you like to join it?" And I knew he was not a member of the party. So I trusted him and I said, "I think I'm a bit too young. I need to think about it. I'm not that quite sure whether it would be the right decision or not." He said, "It's okay. It's okay. You can think about it." And then I was asked again during my studies. And I said the same. I think I'm too young. I need to think about it. And it was accepted. But I know people who were really pressured because, they wanted to have teachers who support the system and party members. But I didn't feel the pressure, but I know people who were pressured. So it was it depended on the people you met and it depended on the people who were asking you, I guess.
And I guess if you're looking for promotion, then being a member of the party is a positive for something like that.
Yeah, and I know people who said, "Oh, I was asked, yes, of course, I want to join the party." So, as I said, it depended on the people, as a lot of things that happened during GDR times were dependent on the people who you met.
At the school that you were working at in Magdeburg, were many of the teachers members of the party, or was the majority non-members, would you say?
I think maybe half of the teachers, or maybe more than half of the teachers were members, I guess. So maybe the majority were members of the party, I guess, yeah. but I'm not quite sure. But I think maybe half of them, or a bit more than a half. I'm not quite sure.
Did you ever think that you'd visit the UK at some point?
No. So the UK was really, really far away. I had always dreamed of going there, but I was sure there would be no chance before I turned 60. So because 60 was the age for women, when you could be a pensioner, when you could stop working. And then I said, okay, I need to wait till I'm 60, then I can travel to the west part of Germany and I can travel to Great Britain. So, and then it happened much earlier, but I never thought I could go there. And it was a bit strange because you were teaching students about London, about the parts of the UK, about the Queen, about the political system, about the beauty of Wales and Scotland, but he had never seen it before. It was a bit strange. Yeah.
I've got some copies here of English for You, the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it really interesting reading because it's there's all the description of London and Big Ben and stuff like that. But then there's the political slant where they talk about the landlords exploiting the workers, and it's an interesting viewpoint into how ideology sort of crept into education, or not crept in, was overtly used in education in East Germany.
Yeah. So it was, maybe when you have a look into the book, you see a lot of these ideological slant. I remember there was a text about a lemon squeezer who squeezes the people like lemons to give their best for the system, and maybe to show this capitalist way of dealing with people. So in all of the text, you saw this ideological slant. But maybe as a teacher in your class, you are free in a way. So you can leave something out, or you can let something in. So a lot depends on you as well. So on you as a teacher. So you can have a lot of ideological slant, or you don't have to, because there is no one else, only the students. It was a kind of freedom for me too as a teacher, because I think you could use this freedom.
Were you ever worried that one of your students may be informing on your teaching?
Yeah, so there was really a situation in which I was really nervous, because even students could be informants. So there were rumors that even students could work for the Stasi. And once I was talking about a guest from the western part of Germany and her impressions of the GDR. So she was my age, she was young, and she came to Magdeburg because she wanted to get to know the system. And when she came, but she showed me a lot of ways which I didn't see anymore, because you were so much used to the system that you didn't see things. And she came and she was really free and open. And I think maybe we felt the pressure of the system. I don't know whether I can express what I want to say, but maybe she was more open than I was, and she was more critical than I was. So she saw things I didn't see. So she saw the gray houses and everybody gray and everything was gray, and I didn't see this anymore. And so we talked about the differences of the system, and the next day when I was in front of the 9th class, I guess, we were discussing this, and there was one student writing all the time, and I was really, really nervous, but he was doing his math homework when I went to him, and I said, I thought, oh no, he's going to write down everything I say, but he was just doing his math homework. But it was a situation in which I was so nervous. I thought it was the end of my teaching career, really. It was hard, but nothing happened. Everything was fine afterwards.
Did you have to be quite guarded in the staff room amongst the other teachers about what you talked about, or did you feel relatively free to speak?
Maybe I didn't feel relatively free because you were not that open in the teacher's room, but maybe again the sense of what can I talk about with whom. So you had people, or maybe there were people you could trust and there were people I didn't trust, and so it was a bit restrictive, I guess, but yeah, maybe you were careful, or I was careful, or people were careful. Yeah.
Did you have to do a lot of preparation for lessons? I mean, as being the husband of a teacher, I know that in the UK, my wife spends a lot of time doing lesson preparation and all of that side of things. Was that the same in the GDR?
Yeah. I did a lot of preparation, and even as a young teacher, you do not have that much experience, and I have planned everything. So I was sitting down and I have 45 minutes. So I start saying this, I have these questions to ask. This is what we want to read. Yeah, it was a lot of work to do. It was, yeah, because I wanted to do everything perfectly. It was, and still is, a lot of work to do.
And that's unpaid, effectively, as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've read is that East German teachers had to visit their students' homes. Was that something you had to do?
Yeah. So you mean teachers visiting their students, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were a form teacher or a class teacher, so you had a class and you were responsible for them, and then you had to visit them at home. It was because maybe they wanted us to see the child in their home situation, to see the circumstances under which people were living or children were living. And I don't know, I think it was very hard for me because you were not invited. I do not visit people when they do not invite me. And so I was a teacher and I was really young, but I think it was interesting because the people were very friendly and open because they knew the teacher would come. I think I visited round about five families in my time as a GDR teacher, and it was a good atmosphere. Otherwise, I think it was even hard for the parents to know, oh, the teacher comes. Yeah, I think it was hard. And again, it depended on the people. It depended on the teacher and it depended on the parents. And so my memories are quite okay about these visits, although I know it was a person of the system coming into their home. I don't know. You understand what I mean? So maybe
yeah. You were almost like a representative of the state.
Yeah, and you had to go there. And I think I was very shy and I was very friendly and I was very a bit full of respect. So I was not the teacher who came and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" and blah blah blah. So I think I was I was an okay guest, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm sure you were. How were those families selected? You said you only went to see 5. How were they chosen?
So I think it was, I don't know, maybe at first I wanted to visit the parents where the children had some problems at school. Maybe their school performance was not that good. So maybe we try to find help, or what can we do to support the child to understand what might be the problem. I think I visited the students who had some problems in performing at school, I guess. Yeah.
Did the school ask you to come back with certain bits of information? I mean, were you told what to look out for on these visits, or was it purely around trying to improve the educational attainment of the student?
Yeah. When I think about this nowadays, I think I wasn't told why I had to visit them. So it was a rule. You had to visit these families, and nowadays I think I didn't have a special task, so I went there and I thought about this special task. I thought about it and I thought, hey, maybe we have to try to find some help for the child or to do something together, to work with the parents. I don't know whether it was like that at every school. Maybe some headmasters or headmistresses were stricter and had a plan. So, and afterwards, maybe you had to go and had to tell them. I was never asked. I was asked, have you started visiting the families? I said yes. And then it was okay. And I wasn't asked again. But maybe I started in 1985. Then I was a year at home with my son. So I have 3 years of teaching experience. And maybe in the 80s, it was a bit more relaxed already. So I think there are teachers who have different experience, I think. So
yeah. What was the mood amongst the students? Did they feel hopeful about their future, or did they share their aspirations or wishes with you?
Yeah, I think when I started in the 1985, 86, nobody believed that there would be an end of the GDR. So you thought about you could live your life in this system to find whether to study or not, whether to learn English or not, whether to have a family or not, but nobody thought about the end of the GDR. And students were quite open, and I think my advantage was that I was an English teacher, so I was representative of this modern world. And so they were quite open and we spoke about a lot of things.
What sort of things did they talk about with you?
Maybe we spoke about this music, about the text of the songs, the lyrics, about the problems of the GDR, maybe the problems young people have, yeah. But nobody spoke about the end of the GDR. So maybe the boys were interested in technology and they thought about flying to the moon or whatever, and the girls spoke about their future families, and this was quite normal for GDR times.
I think at one point you had a class where you asked them to write down to imagine life in 2010.
Yeah. Okay, I started in September 1805 and I had a substitute lesson. So a teacher was ill and I had to teach a class. It was, I guess, 28th of September, or maybe I was quite young as a teacher, quite unexperienced. And it was a complete class, not just a class with all the ones who wanted to learn English. So it was a complete class. That's why I couldn't do English. And for me and my friends, the year 2000 was quite important. And then I thought so I was always thinking about in 2000, what will have happened? And then I thought maybe they are around about 10 years younger than me. Maybe the year 2010 could be interesting for them. And so I said, please write down how you imagine your life in 2010. And they wrote down that they would fly to the moon. They wrote down that they would go to the United States of America, that they would go to Western countries. They would have big cars, big companies. And in their essays, the ideology of the GDR was not transported. So they didn't follow the GDR ideology. And they were writing, and I thought, okay, lesson is over. I collected their sheets of paper, and when I was at home I saw what they wrote, and I felt a bit nervous and a bit excited and surprised, because when I was a student I thought I have to write down what my teacher expects me to write down, and I was very surprised that they were that open, and I thought, oh wow, I shouldn't show the essays to no one. And I kept them and kept them and kept them. And because it was a substitute lesson, no one asked me again. So I didn't give it back, or I didn't give them back. They didn't ask me, and I had them. And when after reunification, I thought maybe it is kind of a very important thing how young people in the GDR were thinking or what their dreams are about. And then years later, I guess in 2006, I met a young woman. She is a journalist in Berlin, and we were talking about a film. And she said she knows somebody who produces films like this. And I said, hey, I have these essays. And then Gunther Scholz, he is a producer of the film. He contacted me, and then we try to find all these students from 1985. And we found lots of them, and then we met at school, and they were given their essays, and most of them didn't remember anything. And it was quite nice to see that. So they were reading what they had written down when they were 16 or 15. They were 15. And then he accompanied some of them. And in the film, you can see how their life and what their dream was, how their dream was different from their life now or not. So it is quite a nice documentary.
That must have been really quite moving for you to see them again.
Yeah, it was quite moving and very emotional. Yes, right.
Is that documentary available online anywhere?
I think it is not available online because sometimes people ask me whether they could watch it. I have some DVDs still, but it is not online. No.
Okay.
Unfortunately not. Mm-hmm.
How was your performance evaluated as a teacher?
I think it was not that much evaluated. So sometimes at the beginning of my teacher's career, so to say, some members of the school administration came to visit lessons, but I remember not more than 2. So it was just 2 lessons, I guess. So they wanted to see how I teach, what is my relationship to the pupil, to the pupils. So there was not much. But don't forget, it was again the 1985, 87, 88 when everything became a bit different.
What did you enjoy the most about being a teacher?
What is the best about being a teacher? I think I like it to be together with young people, to share their dreams, to speak about what they think, to accompany them. I like everything about teaching, I must say. And I liked to have kind of a freedom in front of the class, because maybe it is much responsibility you have as a teacher, because you have to think about what you say and what you do. You have to be critical about your own behavior. So because there is much influence teachers have, I think, and we should be aware of this. So yeah, I liked to communicate with them, to teach English, to discuss. So maybe the preparations at home are not that funny mostly, but being together with these kids and teenagers is quite fun.
And what's the worst thing about being a teacher?
The worst, you have classes with 30 students and you have to check their class tests. So you think it is a never-ending story. So you have done 15 and you think, hey, I've been sitting here so long and now I have managed half of everything.
Yeah, I think my wife would 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Being a woman in East Germany, did you feel empowered or an equal of men?
I think yes. So I was a woman and that's it. So I think we didn't think about that much about gender roles as we do today. So it was very important for me to own my own money, to have my job, and I really felt emancipated in a way. Yeah, I think I felt emancipated and I could do everything I wanted to do. I could be a teacher, I could study what I wanted to study, I could feel free. Yeah, I felt free in my personal life, I must say. And maybe today things have become a bit different. People have become more critical. And at that time, I was not that critical, I must admit. I didn't think about that so much. It was not such a big topic to talk about. I don't know whether you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So I thought
I
about
do.
I thought about my role, but I was a woman. I could go my way. I could do what I wanted to do, and maybe there was pleasure or kind of, I don't know, but I didn't feel this.
Yeah. When you weren't teaching, what did you get up to in your spare time?
Oh, so in my spare time, I liked listening to music. I liked reading, going to the cinema, meeting people. So the hobbies, yeah. So this is what I liked. Maybe going to other places, going to Berlin or to Leipzig or to Dresden, or so maybe, yeah, traveling. I didn't like to be at home. I wasn't a couch potato, so I was always somewhere.
Always on the move. Did you visit many of the other countries of the Warsaw Pact?
I like to go to Hungary because I liked to go to Budapest because there you felt kind of being in the west world, or so, maybe, I don't know how to say this, but it was colorful, it was open, you felt free there, although we didn't have a lot of money because it was limited how much you could change. So you couldn't go to restaurants, you couldn't do a lot of things, but you could feel the spirit of this town and of this country in a way. So during my studies, I was in Russia. So we were in Smolensk and in Moscow for a shorter period of time. But as a tourist, I went to Budapest. Yeah, mostly to Budapest.
Mm. And how did you meet your husband?
My husband, I met him in 1984. It was the typical GDR situation to meet somebody. So you went to a disco, or I went to a disco, which started at 7 or 7:30, was over at 12. And yeah, there we met. It was a students' club, and there we met in 1984. Right. Yeah, it's long ago.
Yeah. Can you remember what you were dancing to?
I know my husband would remember. I don't remember. I know it was a very fast song because we were dancing very fast and we were singing very loudly, but I forgot the song, so I don't know.
No, that's great. That's a great image for me anyway, that. I've lost my way on the questions now. Did your views about the GDR change as you got older? Did you become more frustrated?
Yeah, maybe being frustrated is a good way to express how people felt, because maybe it was a big difference between what you were reading in the newspapers and what you were experiencing. So frustration is a good word. The system was very narrow. You could live in the system according to the rules of the system. So you could live your life if you accepted the rules. So it was very restrictive, I would say. You couldn't think for yourself. You couldn't think wide or big. You couldn't step out of line, I would say. Or maybe to express it in other words, you couldn't deviate from the script. It was not that much possible. So I doubted whether our elections were fair and honest. And many of us felt we were stuck in a hamster wheel because you saw the difference between reality and fairy tale they were speaking about. And you had this west part of Germany, and you always compared everything. You saw the news, you had relatives there, so everything was being compared. And yeah. So yeah, frustration is a good word to say how you felt. So the system kind of limited you because you couldn't travel. I would have liked to go to London. Why not? I couldn't read the books I wanted to read because you couldn't buy them. I couldn't speak openly about everything I wanted to say. So it was, there were a lot of restrictions, I guess.
Yeah.
Even the shortage of goods was a problem.
What was it like having children in East Germany?
Having children. So having children, if I compare it to nowadays, we were really young mothers. So all my friends, we got maybe, we were 22, 23 when we got our children. So we were really young mothers. But again, we didn't think about it. So we had a family, we got children. So I think we were supported quite well. There were daycare and kindergarten, you got financial support. But I think I being a teacher, I think it was okay because I didn't have to start that early in the morning. I didn't have to go to some place where work started at 7 or so. My first lesson started at 7:45 roundabout, and I had some free time in the afternoons because I could be flexible with my work when to prepare lessons. But people or women who had to work companies or factories, I think they had a hard life because you had to go to kindergarten or daycare in the morning. And so it was kind of nice. Having children is always nice, but so it was okay, but I think it was also much work for young mothers.
When did you first start to notice signs of dissent in East Germany?
Maybe the first signs, I guess, were the essays the students were writing, because I couldn't imagine that students are that brave to write down these things, and they knew a teacher would read what they had written down. When I noticed maybe in 87, 88, when some people were allowed to visit their relatives in the west part of Germany. So people were saying more openly what their real opinion was. And maybe in 89 when the demonstrations started, when people were brave enough to have demonstrations and to show that they wanted to have freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And so, first signs. Maybe the summer of 89 when a lot of people were on holiday in Hungary and left this part or left the GDR and went to Austria and then to the West Germany. So, yeah.
Yeah, because you were obviously seeing all of that being reported on West German TV as well.
Yeah.
Did you go on any of the demonstrations?
No, unfortunately not, because I was pregnant in this time, and my parents and my husband said I wouldn't be allowed to go there. I wanted to, but I didn't dare, and because you didn't know how demonstrations might end. Yeah. So they tried to intimidate people, and there was police and tanks and Stasi, and so my husband went to demonstrations, but in school they told teachers, hey, you are not allowed to go there. You shouldn't go there. I know teachers who went to demonstrations. They didn't follow these rules, but it was quite an exciting, a very special time.
What did your husband do for a living?
He was an engineer in a construction firm, so they built houses.
Probably quite in demand in East Germany then.
Yeah.
Where and when did you hear about the opening of the border?
So the opening of the border. So maybe I must tell the story. So we had these relatives in the western part of Germany, and I was allowed to go there in October 1989. So I need a special permission. I was pregnant, and so my headmistress said, yes, we can let her go because she is pregnant. She will come back. And so I was in Göttingen, West Germany, for around a week, I guess. And so we were watching the news. And when I said goodbye to my relatives, I said, because it was the 50th birthday of a cousin, and I said, okay, maybe I hope I can come back when you turn 55. So we said goodbye to each other for a longer period. And that means I didn't believe that this could happen. And it was the night or the 8th November. We were watching the news as we did always, especially during this time, because it was everything there were, or every time, every day there were news and new developments and new information. And so we watched the news at 7 or 8, and we got the information that from now on, people who want to leave the GDR are allowed to leave the GDR at the borders of the GDR. So that means you didn't have to go to Prague or to wherever. And then we thought, okay, all the people who want to leave, who want to go forever, can now leave the GDR. And we went to bed, and we didn't have any WhatsApp, any smartphones, anything else. We didn't have a telephone, and we went to bed and slept this most exciting night. And in the morning, I visited my mom. She lived maybe 500 meters away, and I wanted to ask her something. And she said, "Hey, have you listened to the news? In Berlin, people are dancing on the wall, and the wall is open." And I couldn't believe it. I thought, "Hey, Mom, what are you talking about? Hey." And then, yeah, this is how I got to know. And then my husband was talking to a friend who lived in Berlin. And he said, "Hey, it was such an exciting night. So we spent the complete night in West Berlin." And I said, "Okay." And we slept. How terrible. Yeah, but it was quite amazing. It was so I don't know how to say it. How hilarious. I don't know. Wonderful.
Yeah. It's still a great story. When you went to Göttingen, did West Germany live up to your expectation?
So I was told before, because my husband was in Cologne in 87 and my mom was also in Göttingen in 86. And because I had watched a lot of West TV, I knew how everything looked like. And yeah, so it was more than I expected, because it was colorful. You could buy everything. I know that buying everything is not the most important thing in life, but so it was. So the shops, it was the smell of everything. You felt much freedom and much space and much color and much of everything.
Did you find it a bit overwhelming sometimes?
Yeah, it was totally overwhelming. It was totally overwhelming. Yeah.
And when was the first time you crossed the border after the opening of the wall?
It was, I guess, 1 or 2 days later, because my grandparents, they had lived in Stapelbock, which is a very small place in the Harz Mountains, and it is the last village in the GDR. Then there is a small river, and on the other side there is already the Eckertal, which is a small village in West Germany. And when I was a child, I was growing up with the border, because we needed special permissions to visit my grandparents, although the place was in the GDR. And when I was a child, I saw the border, I saw the place on the other side, and I wasn't allowed to go there, and I couldn't understand this. And I saw there were horses, there was a restaurant, there were people looking to the other side, and there was police, and I thought, hey, there is the same air, the same sky, the same sun. People look like us, and I cannot go there. It was, yeah, I didn't understand it. And when I was in Göttingen, they went to me to that place from the other side, and I stood there, and I looked to Stapelbock, to this little village in the east. And that was the place where they opened the border 1 or 2 days after this 9th November. And this is the place where I went to my first time after the collapsing or the falling down of the border to this western part. Yeah, It was really, really wonderful.
What did you spend your Begrüßungsgeld on?
Oh, I remember my husband got Begrüßungsgeld and I got Begrüßungsgeld, and my husband wanted to buy Coke and a hot dog or a sandwich. And I said, hey, you cannot spend this money on things to eat and drink. But he did. I didn't eat and drink anything because I wanted to save the money, because I wanted to buy, I don't know, clothes, a car, whatever, big things, but not something to eat or drink. I couldn't understand it. And it was very hard to buy. Then when we had this Western money, it was very hard to buy my first toilet paper for West German money. It was really hard to spend this good money on things like this.
Coke and a hot dog. That wasn't the answer I was expecting. But anyway,
Yeah.
How did the vendor impact you as a teacher?
So I think there was a big impact, but I was very young, and I think it was okay because I was young enough to be ready for a new system, and I was old enough to have a job, so to say, to earn my money. So the school system of the GDR was totally abolished. A new system was not created, but so we had this school system from the West then. So that meant teachers had to write applications. So we could apply for the different forms of school or kinds of schools. So secondary education or grammar school. And in 1991, a new school system started, and a lot of students wanted to have this grammar school education. That means they wanted to have these A levels to be able to study then, because it was very limited in GDR times to get the possibility to have these A levels, which enable you to study at a university, for instance. And so I liked it so much because my first new school after the vendor was quite nice. So we were a team of teachers who were totally enthusiastic. We wanted to create another system. We wanted to teach new methods. And even I thought about, hey, I can travel to Britain now. So being an English teacher makes sense now. So in a way, yeah. So it was hard because everything was new, but it was totally nice and exciting because we wanted to have something new. So it was quite good.
So you had to apply for your job again after the vendor. Mm-hmm. So were any of your fellow teachers not able to continue in their profession? So if they had been members of the party, did that prevent them from teaching?
Mm-hmm. I think those teachers who worked as headmasters or headmistresses who were members of the party, I think they couldn't work as headmasters anymore. I do not know a lot of teachers who were not allowed to go on. I know some stories of people who were not allowed, who couldn't go on teaching, but I do not know many. So I know one teacher who couldn't work in the system, but I think it was because they didn't need their subject. So I have heard of people who were not allowed to go on teaching, but I personally don't know anybody.
Right. So if you were teaching Marxism, Leninism, there's not going to be a lot of demand for that in the new Germany, I guess.
Yeah.
What was it like for things changing in East Germany? I mean, the shops change, loads of things change there. There's less support for the individual as well. Was that unsettling to see those changes?
So maybe I think the complete system changed. So the money, insurance, support, everything changed. And I think it was hard for a lot of people, for many people. My parents had to face early retirement at the age of 55. When I was young, I thought, hey, 55 is okay to have early retirement. But when I was 55, I thought, no, I would like to go on working. I wouldn't love to sit at home. A lot of people had to cope with unemployment in the 90s. So it was maybe this big enthusiasm. People went to demonstrations to fight for a new system, changed because now everything was collapsing. Companies closed. Nobody wanted to buy East German chocolate, wanted to drink East German coffee, wanted to buy East German clothes. So it was quite hard. For me, being a teacher, I think not that much changed because I was young enough and old enough in these two ways. But a lot of things changed and it was quite hard for a lot of people. And I think all these winners after the reunification, some of them lost a lot of things. So it was not just winning. So yeah.
Did you did you feel that your position had changed as a woman in the new Germany from what it was in East Germany?
I think for me personally, not, because I had the same friends, I had the same job, I had the same family, the same surroundings. So not much changed. My position as a teacher was nearly the same responsibility, the same job to do, the same things. I think when I compare my life to women who grew up in the western part, maybe a lot of families came to Magdeburg because they needed a lot of people working in administration and so. And there were a lot of women who didn't work. They had husbands who worked, but women didn't work. And then I thought, hey, am I a bit more emancipated than they were? So, and when I have a look at how everything had changed nowadays, women do a lot of things to be beautiful, to be attractive, to win, to be the next top model, whatever. I don't know whether we have lost, a bit of our emancipation as a woman, as women. So this is what we didn't think about that much. But maybe society changes and in a way this is normal. But for me personally, I think my role has not changed.
What about the provision of childcare? Did that change immediately or was that more gradual?
It didn't change that much because we had the same infrastructure in the place. So we had the daycare, we had the kindergartens, but maybe I know people or friends who moved to places in West Germany, and they say the infrastructure was not that good in the 90s, maybe because mothers were expected to stay at home and to look after their children. So I think there was a big difference between the east and the west part of Germany related to this topic, I guess.
What would you say is your fondest memory of life in the GDR?
My fondest memory. So I think being a child growing up in this small village in the nature was quite nice. And maybe my fondest memory is that we were happy about the small things. So consumption, materialism, material things were not that important because you couldn't get them. So now you can buy everything whenever you want to have it. And in GDR times, you got something because you were lucky to come to a shop in that moment when they sold something and you got it and you were happy. I think it sounds a bit stupid, but I don't know whether I can express what I want to say. But yeah, so maybe as a child, I think you do not think about that much in which system you are growing up. So you are just a child and so I think my fondest memory being on holiday with my parents at the Baltic Sea, things like this. So the sun and the sand and the sun and the sea. So maybe this.
Tell me about your first trip to the UK.
My first trip to the UK. My friend Christiane, she's an English teacher as well. She's as old as I, and her daughter is as old as my oldest son. And she said, hey, there is a program for English teachers going to South England. and it was in October 1992. Yeah, it was my first trip, and it was so amazing. We went to Brighton and Bath and London and Oxford, and I was kind of dreaming all the time. I couldn't believe my eyes. So it was a group of teachers, and we had some training in the morning, some lessons, and in the afternoons we visited places. And it was so nice to see in London, to see the sights which you had seen in the books, and now you were standing in front of them. It was quite a good time, quite a good trip. It was, I know, I have a lot of memories of this. Yeah, it was quite good.
Yeah, I can imagine. That must have been really, really special for you.
Yeah.
Have you or your parents had a look at your Stasi files?
No, unfortunately not. I have filled in a form, and I just need to put a stamp on it and to send it. And I don't know why I don't do that. I had a try in the 1990s, when everybody was talking about Stasi files and Stasi and who was the one who observed you and where you observed or not. I had a try, and they sent me a letter and said, no, there is nothing, but we are still looking for things and we are trying to find everything, and I should try again. And this is what I didn't do, but I want to do it. So maybe, I promise you, I will try to find out, and I can tell you whether there is something.
Yeah, maybe we do an episode 2, depending on what you find.
Yeah, okay, maybe. Could be interesting or not, or quite boring.
Yeah, it might be just one blank piece of paper in there. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
You still live in Magdeburg. Is it difficult now to remember what it was like in GDR times? Has the city changed a huge amount?
So the city has changed a lot, because Magdeburg was an industrial city. It was very grey, and there was a lot of much industry. So the air was not very good. It was dirty. The Elbe River was not that clean. And now Magdeburg is a very beautiful city. I love it so much. I think the Elbe River has come closer to the town. There are a lot of places to relax, so it is very green. We have a lot of sights to see, a lot of cultural opportunities, and there are some exhibitions which show the old Magdeburg, where you can see photos, and then you see, hey, have a look how beautiful it has become. And sometimes you walk through Magdeburg and you think, hey, how did it look like? I cannot remember. And then sometimes you remember, and then you see how much has changed and how beautiful it has become. It is really, really nice. Yeah. Okay. But we have a lot of books with photos of the old Magdeburg, and sometimes we have a look at them and say, hey, yeah, how nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so this episode is brought to you by the Magdeburg Tourist Board. It's been fantastic speaking with you tonight. We've covered the Bay City Rollers through to teaching English, the fall of the wall. I mean, you know, we've covered a wide range of subjects, but it's been really fascinating speaking. You know, you're the first teacher that I've spoken to who taught in the GDR. And it's just a really interesting insight, particularly with my wife being a teacher as well.
Okay, yes.
I might actually try and get her to listen to this episode. She's never listened to any of the other ones, but maybe this one will do the trick. I don't know.
And maybe, people have to come to Magdeburg, So maybe,
Well, you've sold it to me. Sounds great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is not that big and not that small. Yeah. So, a lot of things you can discover.
Don't miss the episode extras such as videos, photos and other content. Just look for the link in the podcast information. The podcast wouldn't exist without the generous support of our financial supporters, and I'd like to thank one and all of them for keeping the podcast on the road. The Cold War conversation continues in our Facebook discussion group. Just search for Cold War Conversations in Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, and see you next week.